somewhere someone is dreaming about having the life you have now. That, while simple, just keeps things in perspective for me a lot of times, where I'm sitting there and I'm going, oh, this sucks. Or, dude, you have the life that 10 years ago you never thought you'd have. I always think about that and try to keep myself in perspective, looking back like you did and being like, you know what? I have done a lot. It is okay to rest for just a second and appreciate and stay in gratitude for what it is that you have created.
Hi, and welcome to the Studio Takeover podcast. I am Kat Ford Coates. Today, I'm talking with Matt Stagliano of Stone Tree Creative. One of the things I always love about talking with Matt is he's just such a magnetic dude, right? He's got a killer voice. He's super funny, and his work is pretty great too. He has a studio in Bethel, Maine, and you will find during this conversation, we definitely go off on some pretty entertaining tangents. But one of the things I admire most about Matt is his drive to evolve, both personally and professionally. He's in a town of very few people, and he's managed to make it work by diversifying what he does in his offerings, but also in focusing on what he loves to create. And I think that's a really important piece of the puzzle for a lot of portrait photographers, especially where in this space of, oh, it'll never work in my town. Tune in. Let's go talk to Matt. Hello, Mr. Matt Stagliano.
Hello, Miss Kat Ford Coates. How are you? Are we having a virtual coffee together?
Oh, it's just the best way to go about it.
Cheers. Fuel up. Fill the tanks.
Thanks so much for meeting with me. Why don't we start by you just introducing yourself, telling us who you are, where you are, your business. We'll take it from there.
I'm a portrait photographer based in the western part of Maine. So Maine's known for lobsters and lighthouses, or moose and mountains, and I'm on the moose and mountain side.
Gotcha.
So live in a really small town, about 700 people. It's a ski tourists little town, and I've got a studio called Stone Tree Creative, and it is nothing but contemporary portraiture. No weddings, no kids, no babies, just adult portraiture. And I've been doing that now. I've had Stone Tree for about 6 years, but was doing commercial and editorial work for about 7 years prior to that.
Now, you mentioned like Stone Tree is a separate entity, and anybody who's followed me for any length of time knows that I'm constantly talking about how a business is a separate entity from who you are. Prior to that, was your photo work under another umbrella, or is it just something that sort of evolved into being Stone Tree?
I was a corporate guy for a really long time. Prior to becoming a photographer, I was doing corporate mergers and acquisitions and saw a lot of small businesses in that. So when I got out of corporate and was trying to decide what to do and really fell into photography, I said, all right, well, let's set this up with a little bit of forward thinking. So I set up an overarching LLC that I said, I don't know where this is going to go. I don't know how it's going to splinter off. Eventually, I may want to sell it. So how do I start to compartmentalize the business ideas that I had? So I said, all right, well, let's start to structure this. So I got that LLC. And then in Maine, I just have doing business as Stone Tree Creative, doing business as Firelance Media, so that I can create and get rid of those DBAs very easily, but everything just rolls up to me. I'm not some mega corporation, but everything just rolls up under me. Good thing is I can have different brands, different bank accounts, all of that per DBA, and it keeps my business structure for me much cleaner. If I decide to turn things on or shut things off, it gives me that latitude.
Okay, now what is Firelance Media?
So Firelance Media was the company that I had prior to Stone Tree Creative. So when I got out of corporate, I do a lot of on-range shooting, long-range shooting. And so I would bring my camera to the gun range and I'd start taking pictures, and I started taking some classes and learning how to get better at certain things. And I'd take pictures of me and my friends having a good time. Those got picked up by magazines and a
Oh,
lot of
fun.
large groups and manufacturers. And they started asking me for work. I had no desire to be a photographer, but I was just like, cool, this is great. Didn't know what I didn't know about anything,
Sure,
right?
sure.
So I was doing that, and suddenly I had these groups and manufacturers saying, all right, we want some photos of these products or for this campaign. I said, I'm going to have to charge them, but I don't want to do this in a shady way. So that's when I set up the LLC, set up Firelance Media, and
Here
was
is my
doing
PayPal invoice from my personal account. Yeah.
that's exactly what I wanted to stay away from, right? So I set this all up, and that way I could then have letterhead. Now that I think about all of this, in those days where I was trying to be professional without even knowing what I was doing, I found a price list that I had originally set up in like 2011 for the Firelance services, somewhere around there, 2011, 2012. And I had like clip art on it, my price list that I was going to, it was wonderful looking. And I'll have to send it to you privately. There's no way anyone's ever going to see this. Um, but the funny thing was, like, even then, I was aware of like the need to charge a certain amount. I couldn't just like shoot and burn it, right? I had to come out of the gate. Let's set the prices at what I think prices should be set at. And so I set them pretty high for that industry. Fast forward 7 years when I got to Stone Tree, and I'd gotten bored of the commercial work and gotten bored of that industry. I started Stone Tree with portraits, and it was very easy to translate pricing structure over and really solidify that and set the market average for my area. I didn't face a lot of those hurdles that a lot of folks hit when you're trying to set your pricing, when you're trying to start out for the first time. When I was pricing for Firelance, I had no idea what I was doing. I was just kind of throwing numbers out there. But then you learn over several years, so that when I switched my niche, it didn't come as a shock to my self-value to set the numbers as high as I'd set them, if that makes sense, right?
No, but I definitely like press you to increase on a pretty regular basis.
Totally. And you do, right? And have been for 5 years of basically saying, nope, charge more, nope, charge more. And there's a lot of stuff that comes up with me. I've raised my prices every year, but there's always that little bit of fear that pops up.
Mm-hmm.
That's just like, here it goes. I'm going to price myself out of the market. I'm already, pushing against that ceiling of what the market will bear. And I'm like, if I raise it anymore, then it's going to be all those things come up. He's too big for his britches. He doesn't belong here, right? It's a real squishy feeling that comes up every time you raise the prices. But then you do, and people pay, and then you're like, what? Why did I wait so long?
Right.
It was a worthless fear to have, to know that your work is worth this. Raise it to that. People will pay it, and they always do. And that's not to sound like trying to get over on someone. It's just they will see the worth as well, and they'll pay that price.
Well, and it's our job to educate about that value, because not everybody's going to see that value right away, right? Like, I was talking to one of my mentees this morning, and she was talking about how you have to get ahead in your marketing and your communication and how you educate your clients on what it is that you actually do. Photos are a byproduct, right, of an experience that you provide. Totally. And everybody's experience, is going to be a slightly different, even if the systems are modeled similarly, right? Because there's one variable that cannot be replicated, and that's you.
Something that I've seen, and I've certainly experienced as a business owner, especially as a new business owner, right, is you can follow a model and a structure to the letter, but there is no one you can learn that inner stuff from, how to accept being told no, right? all the stuff about your own self-value. You can't learn that from you or any other coach out there. You can, as a student, learn and hear it, but you have to do that inner work first, right?
Sure.
And, going through a lot of, coaching over the years with you, I know you've predicted things that I'll run into. I'm like, yeah, it's never going to happen. And then I bump into it. I'm like, well, there it is. Okay, well, I should listen to someone with experience, right? And
that's
but
my
the
curtsy.
thing is,
I'm in a chair curtsy.
Yeah, you're welcome. But those are the things that you as a business owner have to learn for the first time and experience and really bump up against. And even though I knew, XYZ was coming, when I finally bumped into it, that's when I realized, like, oh, there's some stuff in me that I have to deal with. It's not just follow the plan. It's you have to experience some of those things. Now, when it comes to that, all I'm saying, as I see you gearing up, is, in the case of this person, she had to face those feelings of pleasing, or right, and that's what comes up. And then you realize, oh, I can just charge my normal rates and everything will be fine. I don't have to compromise myself for somebody else. But I don't know if that was probably present to her until she bumped into this particular situation, right?
Look, if I roll into Louis Vuitton with a passel of people, like 25 people, they might give me some champagne while I'm there, but they're not going to bulk rate the bags.
Right.
Just slash and burn. It's how are you going to incentivize that still makes it sustainable for you? Like the whole purpose of a transaction, right, means that both parties, or not even a transaction, just an agreement, right? Both parties have to feel like they're getting more value than what they're giving up for it. So for the business owner side, it's got to be like, I've got to feel like the cash that I'm getting, right? Or in a trade situation, right? Like the portfolio I might build or the marketing fodder or insert thing here is more than it's going to take for me to execute the process, create the imagery and the experience for someone. They, on the other hand, have to feel like the cash that they're giving up is less valuable than the experience and the products and the artwork itself that they're receiving. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, it's a no. And, you said like we have to go through and experience things. And there are some things like we will experience no matter what. It's just part of the game of business, right? But that doesn't mean you can't prepare for it. Like the great thing about the business model that I teach is like the sale becomes the byproduct, right? But that doesn't mean that you don't really try to understand objections and closing so that you can have that at the ready when you're in the actual experience and the learning moment itself. Because without that appreciation of closing, then you can't project your income. And if you can't project your income, you can't predict success. If you can't predict your success, you're not in business. You're hoping. And Sarai said it best. She said, hope is not a strategy.
I've bumped into that, man. Like over the years, there are times like, and even recently within the past couple of years, there have been months where I go, I hope something comes through. Like you fall into that little bit of a trap. And then, by just a little bit of application, right? Self-awareness. All right. I'm not doing any of the things that I need to do. All right. So let's recognize it, admit that. And then you start to just apply methods and go through the steps, right? One step in front of the other, and it all starts to work. And it's just so funny how a common trait that I know I've seen in myself is you work, everything goes great, and you're coasting along and you get comfortable, and then you stop doing all the other things, and then you're back in the trough. And it's this sinusoidal up and down, valley and trough, Well,
it's the C word, right? It's that comfortability, right? We get comfortable and then we turn around and we're like, uh-oh, I'm not comfortable anymore because now I don't have bookings. right? Because I let those other tactics and strategies fall, which is when you really have to take a look at automation and like what you can turn on and turn off, like at a pace outside yourself, so that you don't run into the where is my next booking coming from? Like, when's it coming? And like that can be pretty heartbreaking, really, because we get into this business because we want to make art that's on our heart and deliver experiences that are empowering for people, like transformational. And that's a long road to hoe, right? Like first we have to actually produce professional quality work, but then while we're working on all of the strategies and the tactics and the automation and the implementation and putting all of this infrastructure together, then we turn around and we're like, I'm cookie cutting everything because I haven't given any moment for my heart. I don't know about you, but for me, when I'm in that space, like, sure, I might be making a lot of money, but I feel dead inside. Instead of getting excited with people and creating and collaborating with them to be proud of the work I'm creating. And that's why I kind of think, like workshops and allowing yourself the space to have that creative opportunity just on your own time, on your own dime, is so powerful because it brings that joy and that enthusiasm back into the space, because now your heart and your mind are connected instead of just in spreadsheet mode.
Absolutely. You give yourself the chance to just creatively breathe. Yeah. And, it's something I don't do enough, which is why I try to like schedule at least one workshop a year, or, if I can't get to a workshop, buy a class that's outside of my norm and try to play with that, just so that it leads me in different directions. And the thing I love about workshops is you get to go see how other people shoot, understand yourself a little bit more, which can then give you better direction, can give you better creative ideas that when you come back, you can start to work into your sessions, whether it's a creative session for yourself or whether it's a client session, right? I know that that's what happens to me every single time I come back, and now I'm playing with reflections or 3 lights or gels or slow shutter or whatever it is. And, it doesn't become my new focus, but it gives me ideas and options so that as different types of clients come to me, I can better customize their experience. Oh, for you, I can absolutely see this style of photography or this set, or these ideas I've already learned how to do, so maybe we can play with this. And I love workshops for that reason. It's that re-stimulation that you need when you're doing nothing but spreadsheets and websites and SEO and oh my, right?
Like you and I met at a workshop with Parker Pfister.
Yep.
And that was the first workshop I was like, I need to learn how to see differently, was the whole purpose of me going. And Parker and I, we live in the same city.
Right.
And that workshop was out in the Badlands.
Yeah. You were already there, I think, when I showed up. I had driven like 23 hours straight.
Yeah, you drove from Maine to the Badlands, dude.
I didn't stop. Parker was just like, well, can you be here, whatever, to Thursday? And I was just like, and it was Wednesday. And I was like, sure. And I just drove like straight out. So I pulled in, and I remember I'd only kind of peripherally known you at that point. It was funny. I walked in, I was just like, oh, I'm not going to fuck with that one right there. I was just like, and you can beep that out, but I was just like, I'm not going to mess with her. And I was like, hey, I'm Matt. And you're like, hey, I'm Kat. And I remember that. And then Parker turns around. He's like, we drinking? I was like, yes, sir, we are. I was like, I've been on the road for 23 hours. I don't know why that story just kind of popped up. I know it's totally out of place, but that was the memory that just popped up first time we met.
Yeah. Well, I'm sitting in that living room with that giant picture window and like immediately just, whiskey in hand, going down the rabbit hole about come as you are and like all of the things like.
And that whole weekend ties into what we're talking about with the creativity. I got in there and I was filled with that energy. Like the Badlands work was some of my favorite stuff that I've done. And you and I worked a little bit in that workshop, and I got to watch you work and Anita work and all these great photographers doing their thing. that's when I fell in love with that style of workshop. It's a different type of learning than just going in and setting up a light and being like, here's what we're going to shoot for the next half hour.
The way that Parker teaches too, like he forces you lovingly into your heart first. Just appreciate whatever it is that's in front of you or within you, right? And then says, okay, grab your cameras, let's go. But that was the first time for me where I was like, this is worthwhile. And I had done, I mentored at a lot of workshops for Sue Bryce, a workshop with her in Paris in 2016. And that was just elation, right? Like understanding how, Sue poses people, like posing is her superpower for sure. But and like works everybody through a system. We had 9 different models on 3 different floors in this like Parisian chateau that Mozart had stayed in. Like his handwriting was in a guest book upstairs. It was this whole thing. But that workshop was a different experience, right? It was very tactical and very Sue, right? So it was, you came to your heart based off of what you were creating in such a way, like, and it was when she had her original team of mentors too. So like all 9 of them were there and everybody was at a different station and all of this. It was a very different vibe, but I'd gotten more in the space of this is what I'm meant to be doing. This is what I'm supposed to be here for. Whereas with Parker, it was, this is what I'm yearning for. And I don't know if I've ever told Parker that. So Parker, if you're listening, like, thanks for the destination inspo.
Yeah, it's those type of workshops that I really always thought I had to be. If I was going into portraiture, I have to be a classic portrait photographer. I have to shoot this way, right? And I was coming into photography with no training. So going to a workshop like that, producing imagery that I loved, that no one told me, hey, shoot this photo, stand here, look at it this way,
right,
that everything came through me. It was like being rocketed into a belief that, wow, I can actually do this the way that I want and make it feel really good to me. That's really what I look for in any coach or educator, is what do they help me discover in myself? How do they push me not to be them, but to be me? And how can I draw from their experiences, right? So, and I see you infuse a lot of that heart stuff in the way that you teach as well, in terms of not just being tactical and strategic in how to operate a business, but you also look at the soft skills side of it. You look at the heart. You look at digging deep into the self-value portions, right? And I love that, right? And that's what I resonate with most in any instructor, because I know that when you're getting to that point, that you understand your students a little bit better, right? You understand really how they're motivated, what their archetype is, right? And it helps you craft what you teach them a little bit different. But I think for students on the other side, it gives us a better understanding of where your material is coming from, or any educator's material is coming from. If they lead with their heart this way, it explains why they teach the tactical stuff a certain way. If they're leading with their heart and just nothing but creative space and don't do anything tactical, well, maybe that's good on one side, but you would have liked a little bit more instruction over here. I think it's just a matter of figuring out what is your balance between those two, and finding the educators that most resonate with you. For me, it's you, it's Johnny, it's Parker, right? That help you become the artist that you want to be.
I was teaching at TPM this last year in Phoenix, and somebody made the comment, like we had those 2 stations, like one model at each one. Yep. And somebody made the comment to me like, well, I don't want to pose like you. I don't want my work to look like yours. And I was like, I don't want your work to look like mine either.
Totally.
I want you to understand how it is that I create and I approach so that you can make it yours. But if you don't go through the approach piece first, you're not going to learn anything. You're just going to keep doing the same thing you do over and over already. Like, what's the point of taking this class? And I'm curious, Matt, like, who would you say, alive or dead, are your biggest inspirations for anything in life? Not necessarily just photo, but like
From a photography standpoint, I look at Peter Lindbergh. I look at Irving
Oh yeah.
Penn, Helmut Newton. I look at simple, raw, very connected portraiture that the photographer generally has a larger body of work. So I can see how it evolves. I can see different sides of what they're trying to shoot. So I'd say Lindbergh and probably Irving Penn are right up there. I think on the spiritual side, there are a lot of folks. I think I've found myself aligning more with Buddhist spiritual mixed. Let's sprinkle in some psychedelics over here, and let's bring in some Eastern religion, and we'll throw in some Western religion. And I just try to read as much as I can. I try so hard to connect with the folks around me that I find my friends inspire me more than celebrities, or I get a ton of inspiration watching people build and succeed and grow. And it fills me with so much. I'm like, yes, I'm just like them too. That's awaiting me. Let me just do my thing and I'm going to have that success as well. But it's really inspiring to watch when people are building and they have ambition. And I get a lot of energy from watching my friends succeed like that. And
Cool.
It's always been one of those things where it immediately comes with, well, damn, how'd they get that opportunity? How do I do that? But then it's just like, who gives a shit? They got the opportunity. Let them enjoy all that success. It's not about you. So I look at that and that's what inspires me most is really my close circle of friends. And I really love watching their success.
The Studio Takeover started a couple years ago, and it was really just in like this group, small, intimate group masterminding kind of way. Like I'd done some one-on-one coaching for a few years. And I was like, okay, well, let's branch out into group. And it's, grown into this full scale platform and now a podcast and all of the things. And I really do have to stop every once in a while and be like, Kat, it's fine. Right. Instead of the dig and the grind and the like actually appreciate, like I enjoy coming into the studio now. Like I'm in the studio today and on my way here, like this morning, I was like, okay, I've got to go. And like, I'm going to talk to Matt today and oh, I get to go to work where for a long time in this space, like the last couple of years, it's been really hard for me to come in and really kind of challenging because my heart wasn't in it. Like I had clients, the associate had clients, and like I would show up for those, but all consults were happening from home. Like if I didn't have to leave my house, I wouldn't. And I remember like just drinking coffee one morning and just being like, what is going on? And I was mad at myself for not having succeeded as quickly as I wanted to. I'd somehow like put this time frame on it that was so immediate. I couldn't appreciate everything that I was creating with people that was on the horizon that I was putting together. And it wasn't until like that appreciation piece started that I got excited to come in and actually create with people again. Whether it's people for, the Studio Takeover photo shoots or actual like local clients. I feel like that was a really pivotal moment because I could look around and see other people's success and be excited for them versus why did they have it and I don't.
There's one meme out there that says something simple. It's, one of these inspirational ones. And it says, somewhere someone is dreaming about having the life you have now. That, while simple, just keeps things in perspective for me a lot of times where I'm sitting there and I'm going, oh, this sucks. Or, dude, you have the life that 10 years ago you never thought you'd have. I always think about that and try to keep myself in perspective, looking back like you did and being like, you know what? I have done a lot. It is okay to rest for just a second and appreciate and stay in gratitude for what it is that you have created. Might not be your end goal, but just look what's behind you and how you got to this point and appreciate that.
Do you follow Queen Herbie?
I don't.
Okay, so she's this like rising star singer. And like the second you look her up on Instagram or TikTok, you're gonna be like, oh, that song.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
But she's in some coaching cohort somewhere. And she had released a TikTok that was the thing that she learned about being creative is to actually have a photo of her child self in front of her. So like whether it's on your mirror at home or somewhere in your working space, right? To remind you of the child version of yourself that wanted all of these things.
Oh, wow.
Right. And how it's really been a game changer for how she shows up to create, to fulfill that little girl's dreams instead of all of the shit we carry in our heads of where we're supposed to be, when we're supposed to be there, la, 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 like we have any fucking control of it in the first place. And I was like, oh, yeah.
I
And
love that idea.
she shares this photo of me and it's like, me in the backyard. I think I'm 3 years old and I'm holding a pretend microphone and I'm just singing my little heart out. Right. And like, little baby cat. And I think about her and then I think about, little kiddo cat, right. That just love to sing and love to dance and love to paint and just create in general. And then I look around at the space and I'm like,
turns out all right.
It does.
Yeah, it's funny. I love that idea. And I know exactly which picture I would put up. Well,
ooh.
It's one of two. It's one of two. One was me as Boss Hogg. I think I was like 5 or 6 years old. I had a whole full white suit, white cowboy hat, Boss Hogg, right? Because he was the guy that ran Hazard County and the Dukes of Hazzard. I was all about it, like power player at age 5, right? The second image is, and this is such a great corollary, is me sitting down at some game, but I've got headphones on, like I'm almost like I'm DJing or like working in music. And I'm like, this is exactly what I'm doing now. I've got a big microphone in front of me and mixing boards and all that. So it's funny how a lot of that creativity growing up, that business focus growing up, has always kind of been there. And you lose sight of what were those original dreams, what brought you to that, like what brought me to music, right? It's just that thing in me that I have to do it. And it's just so funny after suppressing it for so many years, trying to do what was expected of me, that I find myself back in the space that I'm most comfortable. That's with music and in front of a microphone and just feeling like it's right. It's in alignment, as Sue would say, right? So I'm going to put up those pictures because I love that idea.
That should be the cover for this episode, right? It's just like side by side, because I'll tell you what, I can guarantee you that there is photo of little baby cat dressed up as Daisy Duke, like Dukes of Hazzard every Friday, 8 p.m. on like, in front of the TV. And that was back when TVs were on the floor, right? Where they were sort of installed into pieces of like cabinetry. And you sat like 4 inches away and it was just like
Friday night, man. That was it. Oh, that's really, really funny. And for those listening that are under 40, you have no idea what we're talking about. So yeah, I'll see if I can find those pictures. I know I have the DJ one somewhere. I'll see if I can find the Boss Hogg picture for sure, but I've got it somewhere on some archive, probably in some of these hard drives back here.
Now, you did mention that you came from the corporate space.
Yeah.
And in that corporate space, like how did DJ Boss Hogg Matt get into a corporate structure? And why did you decide to, be like, all right, I'm going to do this on my own now?
I'll step back just before the corporate stuff. So getting out of college, I had a degree in physics and African-American studies. It's a longer story. Went and did a bunch of stuff. Went and did a bunch of stuff. I was a high school teacher. I was a bouncer at a bar. I ran nightclubs. I worked in biotech and like just kind of job hopping, trying to find my thing. I wound up lying my way into an MIT startup, got into that. Fast forward a couple of years, we get purchased by Cisco Systems. Fast forward a couple of months after we get purchased, I wind up in the mergers and acquisitions team. And then I did that for most of the rest of my career. So from a corporate standpoint, I learned a lot of things there about what I wanted and didn't want. Meaning, I love the salary, I love the benefits. Don't get me wrong, especially after being on my own for a while.
Sure.
But I much more enjoyed smaller teams, working for myself, not working for some mega corp for somebody else's agenda, and up the management chain. So that's when I started to realize, like, oh, I can probably do this on my own. Let me give it a try. That's when I started Firelance. I look at those 6 or 7 years that I was doing the Firelance work as my photographic preparation. But it wasn't until I really started Stone Tree and retail portraiture that I got a business education, that I really learned how to do it. Right. So I was at the point before I started Stone Tree, I was going to kind of hang it up. I had been trying to do it on my own, couldn't make it happen, and then turned it around and have created a pretty decent life for myself. The fears that I faced, though, going out on my own, I just realized it was less scary to be on my own than to go back to a large structure that I knew was driving me into the ground.
Sure.
So that's, I don't know if that's a roundabout way to answer your question, but I think I was always kind of looking at it. I can succeed on my own because I absolutely don't want to do that thing that I did before.
Well, and it's interesting too, like when you go through the space, like, because I'm thinking about like the conversation about like, DJ and Dukes of Hazzard and all of the things, and like that version of yourself and looking around at what you have created and how you got there, right? And because we take things and learn things by doing, right? Because I was in IT for a hot minute. I taught voice, and I was in IT in Florida, and when I moved to Boston, I was in IT also. And we like started making friends and all of this stuff. And a buddy of ours was bartending, and he was bartending like 5 to 6 hours a day, making twice what I was making in IT as a network designer. And now this was like the early aughts, right? And I remember thinking to myself, like, wait, so I'm walking to work every day. I can take the T sometimes when I can afford the pass. Right. But 30 grand in Boston, even in 2000, was like, girl, look out. And I was like, I mean, I can bartend. Like I cocktail served and I worked in kitchens in Florida. Like no reason I can't do it. And my first day bartending actually was 9/11. That turned into 12 years. So like you can start anywhere. But knowing like I sort of was ejected from the industry versus like you said, they don't have your best interests at heart, right? Like they just care about their numbers and their goals, and you're working for their dreams. And anytime I've left any industry, it's always been in the space of being ejected from it. And maybe it's just because I don't learn lessons. I don't know. But you do learn and take that with you. And I actually think that, running nightclubs and bouncing probably gave you more of a worldview for at least customer service than
100%.
Working in a corporate space. Like that gives you the structure, right? You've got the SOPs, like this is how you answer the phone, and this is how you take a message, and this is how you deliver a proposal, right? But nobody teaches you the human element of customer service the way the restaurant industry will.
Yeah, I think if you've never had a service job, it's never too late, right? And every place that I go, they're looking for servers and bartenders. If you talk to someone or watch them in customer service of any sort, no matter what they're doing, like you've worked retail, you've worked in a bar, something, because your attention to detail is just a little bit different. And I know that for me, all of those jobs that I did, all of them have contributed to this kind of soup of understanding of how people work in different situations. And now as a photographer, I use that in connecting to clients, right? But I think from the customer service standpoint, yeah, those old school jobs that we hated, like you learn so many little tips and tricks.
Well, and I actually posted this in a story on Instagram recently and was asking about like, how do you define customer service in your business? What do you find to be like the biggest priority? And I got so many answers like, oh, communication, having follow-up communication, having contracts, providing hair and makeup, and like all of these things that are just kind of like, okay, those are added value, but I don't think that's really how you define good customer service. And I'm curious how you define customers, like really terrific customer service for your customers.
I know that I've done my job from a customer service standpoint when I feel that they're comfortable, when I feel that they're at ease and joyful in a session, or at their reveal when there might be a little bit of a tear or, a gasp here and there. When those things happen, those emotional moments, I can tell whether or not I succeeded or failed at any point in my process. If they're excited about the shoot, I did great at the consultation. If they're excited at the reveal, or I know I did great at the shoot. And, so there's all these little check-ins from a customer service standpoint. When I feel that comfort coming from them, I feel like I've done my job, because most folks come to me in a very uncomfortable state. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. And I think comfort is the wrong word. I think connected.
Connected. Absolutely.
Right. Like to you, to the process, to the work, to the experience, because that, like everything you're describing, right? Like whether it is excited about the shoot or seeing their imagery, it's about them being connected to that experience with you, because that allows them to be connected to themselves. I can always tell when somebody's highest values are in connection, because it's how they're connected to the world, right? Like if somebody is really more about like nuts and bolts and logistics, they're connected to themselves differently. Somebody who is really like in love with what it is that they do, and your clients can feel that.
Totally.
Oh man, that's cool. So what would 5-year-old DJ Matt be proud of you for today?
Shit, getting to be 50-year-old Matt, I think, is probably the proudest thing. You made it, dude. That's like the biggest number you could count to. You made it there. I think
Says the physics major. Yeah.
Yes, it's physics major. So, and is time really a thing? Right. So, all right, I won't get into it. So I think for young DJ Matt, it's awesome to show that you can still be creative throughout your entire life, right? So I never thought I would circle back to creativity as being the thing that sustains me, because my creativity, while relatively fostered by my parents, was just kind of like, all right, he's into piano or drums or bass or viola or trumpet, all instruments that I've played, right? But it was always secondary to get a good job. Right.
Gotcha.
It was always secondary to you have to go to college. It was always secondary to here's the life prescribed for you that we would love to see you accomplish so that you can rise above us. Right. It was all very supportive, but it wasn't what I wanted. Right. So looking at that young kid who was creative, to be able to now start to fulfill all that for him is a really kind of cool feeling. Right. To say, hey, you can do all that stuff. You don't have to go through those other things. Keep doing what you're doing as a young creative. Sure. Build on it, build on it, build on it. So I think it's interesting to look back at where you wind up again and say, wow, I'm in the position that I wanted to be in as an adult. I may not appreciate it in every moment of every day, but that's why you look back and you're grateful, because that little kid is now seeing all of this stuff that he wanted come to fruition.
I took a darkroom course in college, and this was the first time I went to college. I failed out of college twice now. It was like I was always the friend that like had the snap and shoot or the instant whatever. Sure. But I took and I was going to learn how to use a camera, and I remember being in the dark room by myself, like We just, run a tank of film, and I was prepping everything for the enlarger and just kind of standing around and looking and being like, man, this would be such a cool job. And this, of course, was also in like 97. So there was barely internet too. But I remember thinking, like, I have absolutely no idea how I would ever make this a thing. And so I just walked away and just, went back to my kitchen expo job at Bennigan's in Sarasota, like doing a whole bunch of stuff I shouldn't have been doing. Right. But like that version of me is like, damn, Kat, that's awesome. But I'm also at the same time like, what does 47-year-old Kat want her life to look like? What does she hope for? Because the hopes and dreams that you have today, like, are just as valuable as the hopes and the dreams as you had as a 5-year-old, yep. Right? And the 90-year-old version of you is going to look back and be like, yeah.
And I think we worry so much on a day-to-day basis about everything that's in front of us. My literal to-do list for the next 3 days, right? We worry about
I know your lists. Your lists are gargantuan.
You're right. And all that is me trying to create order. And it's not allowing me to just kind of stay present, which is where I'm most creative, most productive, most successful in lists and the creation and all of that. It's really interesting to put a list like this away and bring it out a week from now, not pay attention to anything, erase my boards, get rid of my list, and then pull it out a week from now and be like, none of this stuff was important. None of this stuff was critical for me to feel joy or success, right? Nothing is, right? There might be a client where there's a deadline, sure. But other than that, like all those inconsequential things that I feel are important, oftentimes are not. And I don't mean that they don't need to be done, but there's just, what is 90-year-old Matt going to say to 50-year-old Matt? One, can you believe I made it to 90? Two, it's, yeah, all that little stuff didn't matter. It was the relationships. It was the love. It was the gratitude. It was whatever it is that, drives me. It's those pieces that are far more important than respond to Instagram DMs.
And, I used to be in the space of like just these gargantuan lists that were like, and it was something I did instinctively. Like when I started in IT, I actually started as an office assistant. So I would just have a list and I would work through the list as far as I could. Whatever I didn't get done, that block got moved to the top of the next day's list.
Sure.
And I didn't feel a lot of like, oh my God, I have to get through this whole fucking thing. Right. Like it was just, oh, okay. Move it over to Tuesday. Right. But one of the greatest things that I actually learned from Sue at the self-value workshop was just brain dump your list. Like, okay, take your top 3 projects in that brain dump and be like, this is what you're going to focus on. You can't do more than 3, so stick with 3. Now, each one of those 3 still has like underlying activities that have to happen, right? But then you take a look at what's left. What can I outsource? If it can't be outsourced, then it turns into a rubber ball and goes to tomorrow. That for me felt really freeing. That allowed like the version of me for the next day to feel like she had some semblance of control, not necessarily over the outcome, but of a feeling of accomplishment for getting through. Because some days might get through that thing at 2 p.m. and be like, do I want to take on another thing? Right. Or, you know what? Good job, Kat. Go take a nap. Go enjoy time with a friend or go out to eat or hang out with the dogs. Like I can appreciate my day, be present, right? But also like the version of me that's going to experience the benefits and consequences of how I run today. Like, how is she going to feel if X, Y, and Z does or doesn't happen? And I think it was actually Brene Brown too, I think, that was talking about keeping balls in the air. It was really cool. She's like, look, there are glass balls and rubber balls, and your job is to keep all of them in the air. But if you're going to drop any of them, make sure it's the rubber ones, because if the glass one shatters, like, you're pretty screwed, right? So you get to decide what is the glass, right? Is that clients who have already paid you? Is that family relationships? Like, whatever boundaries you set for yourself, those are the glass balls that you keep in the air, and that's what's important. The rubber balls, like, if it drops, babe, it's okay.
I was listening to Jen Swedeen talk about neurodivergency and ADHD and techniques she uses to kind of conquer some of these things. Brain dump was one of the big things. The other little tidbit that I picked up, and I apologize to Jen in advance because I'm not trying to slaughter this analogy, but it's doing things now for your future self, because you know how you act and whatnot. So, for example, putting your keys in the same place every time, because you know if you don't, future Matt is never going to find his keys, right? So thinking about some of these tasks and the things to do, I'm like, what are the ones that are best going to help future Matt not freak out? And that's a lot of times how I look at my lists, right? All right, there's, I'm heading into the weekend. Do I really need to do all these things? No. Like, give yourself some time off, because future Matt is going to love having that time off. So don't even think about it now. Push it out.
Future Matt is going to be pissed off if he wakes up at 6 a.m. on Saturday and has a laundry list of things to do.
Totally. So, this is why I try to look at things that way. But yeah, it's interesting. My relationship with lists. That's a therapeutic podcast is what.
Yeah. Like that's another hour conversation for sure. So Matt, what is next for you? What are you excited about? Like, what's happening in your world that you're creating and you're just really stoked to have unfold?
Sure. So one of the cool things is, kind of like a lot of folks, I'm looking at education as an outlet for diversifying and a little bit of growth for myself. So I'm setting up in a platform, but it's not the normal photography stuff. It's podcasting, it's video, it's all the little bits of tips and tricks that I pick up, not so much from I need to teach the world everything about photography. There's YouTube for that. But these are the tips and tricks that I've learned. So I'm getting really energized putting some of this knowledge down and getting it out there. So that's what I'm kind of building in the background. And I've got, always 9 stokes in the fire, but that is the one that I'm most excited about. And then Generator Podcast and Stone Tree. Those are my, 2 main pillars of my life. It's where all my time goes.
Very cool. Well, with the platform, have you named it yet?
It's right now it's Stuff for Studios. And then I just kind of realized that that name will probably change, mainly because the whole idea behind the platform is starting to morph and change a little bit. And I don't know if that name is going to be the one that fits. It's
the evolution,
domain name that I had. Yeah. But it's definitely evolving into something different. So, yeah.
That's unfolding if ever there were. That's awesome.
Absolutely.
Well, where can people find you? We have Generator Podcast, Stone Tree Creative, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. Do you have a preference?
No. So really it's, I try to research names that have Instagram handles that are not going to be different. So at Stone Tree Creative on just about every platform, and then generatorpodcast.com. And that has social links to the other places as well. But those are the 2 main ones. And yeah.
Awesome. Well, Matt, thank you so much for being here with us today. And guys, definitely check out the Studio Takeover if you haven't already. And be sure to get over to Stone Tree Creative and check out Matt's work. You can definitely see those influences from Peter Lindbergh and Helmut Newton and all of the above. So go check him out today. And Matt, appreciate you. Love you, friend. Have a wonderful, wonderful day, guys.
Bye-bye, Ken.